And hate to just levy a regulation right now that I really don't understand, and would like to talk to some folks that do it for a living, that live in my district, and see what their issues are to make sure that we're not stepping on somebody's toes needlessly. Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mosier, I'm just trying to understand that Mr. Akers alluded to it, and I'll be happy to admit to it, that I've been on the other end of the hook. So I just want to make sure I understand what we're really doing. I had a car that was totaled on the highway. Is this what you're talking about? When that car is no longer movable, you come and tow it? Or are you talking about my car being parked too close to the fire hydrant and you're coming and tow it?
Anything that's law enforcement related, the sheriff's office has authority to tow the vehicle. We have to have some sort of ordinance to regulate who we allow to be part of that tow contract with the sheriff's office. Okay. Is where the ordinance come in. Now, your questions that you're asking and that you do not understand, like Mr. Seeley alluded to and Mr. Akers, is that that's what this advisory board that you would be appointing would do for you guys. Is they would come in. It would be such as Mark Giles, who's in the towing business, Lieutenant Crowder, who's with the sheriff's office, and your local citizen would come in and advise you about the ordinance that you're thinking about putting in place and answer these questions that you're talking about.
Well, that's kind of where I'm going.
Yes, sir.
Because when my car was totaled on the highway,
yes, sir,
I felt like I was gouged by the tow company.
Yes, sir.
Are you saying you're going to protect me now from that?
I'm saying that there will be a process in place, and Mr. Emerson can speak on this, I'm sure, that if you do have a complaint of that nature, you just don't take it up with the tow company anymore. You would actually, the advisory board, which would be the tow person as well as the law enforcement officer, would take these complaints and they'd review the complaints and then proceed to advise the Board of Supervisors on the complaints. Is that right on that?
That's correct. I mean, the way, it might not help you in your individual complaint about that particular tower.
But what's happening is he's now, okay, let's say Mr. Parton has a car accident. I'm not wishing you anything. I just saw you first. Mr. Parton has a car accident. His car is totaled on 95. You've got a list of people. They pick up Mr. Parton's car, take it to wherever. Mr. Parton then says they charge me $500 to tow my car. If we have this ordinance, his recourse is the Board of Supervisors?
No, the way it's drafted now, and again, it's just drafted. It's a proposed ordinance. It could change.
I'm trying to understand what's drafted.
The way it's drafted now is the advisory board stays in effect. It continues in existence after the ordinance is adopted.
So then Mr. Parton complains to the advisory board.
Well, he complains initially to the sheriff. The sheriff makes a decision if either party, either the complainant or the complainee, disagrees with the decision of the sheriff, and the decision of the sheriff could be to suspend that tower from the list or exclude him from the list, then that decision could be appealed to the advisory board. The advisory board would make a decision, and I think the way it's currently written, that decision could then be appealed ultimately to the Board of Supervisors.
And there's also state regulations in the code that allows certain charging for certain acts.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm on 95. I'm going to pay whatever I can to get home.
I understand.
You know, or at least try. And,
yes, sir.
And that's, I don't know anything about towing. I can't be the last resort on towing. I mean, that's not fair to me or to other people. You can't, I mean, I don't know, but you guys might know. I've seen my car towed away. That's all I know about it, but, you know, it's not you can't do that to me.
The policy, I don't believe this is included in the ordinance. I believe it's in the policy from the sheriff's office so that the companies that would be approved ultimately pursuant to the authority granted in the ordinance to the sheriff's office to enter into agreements with the towers would provide for essentially maximum fees that would be charged, both for towing and storage.
I mean, I don't understand, but it seems like what I understand, it's not good. Because you're going to say the guy from Stafford's on the list, he's charging $50 to tow me from here to Richmond, but Jeff's constituent who lives next door to me is going to charge me $1,000. It's like, and then they're both going to come back to me and say, okay, should I be on the list? Should I not be on the list? That's not right. I mean, come on, let's go back to the drawing board and try to figure this out. This is not right.
I think they have to charge the same thing, if I recall, was on the
You've
sheriff's
never been on the highway at
policy.
2 o'clock in the morning, have you?
Okay,
I
let's move this one forward.
Yeah.
I think currently, if I want to call and make a complaint about the things that this advisory board would do, where do I call today if I have a complaint?
Yeah, if you have a complaint in reference to something that you were charged and it's an exorbitant amount of money, then from my understanding is you would complain to the state.
Right.
Right.
And I think the law that was passed last July or July before
And
last,
that's when we're talking.
I think the board needs to see that law.
Okay.
And I think that will help us comprehend, you know, that maybe can help articulate, you know, what we need.
Right.
So we get that, because the way I understand it, either we do our own or the state has a body that you go by their rules, or we can go by the county rules. So that's the way I understand it at this point. But I do think we need to talk. You say you've met with all the
Yes. there was-
majority of the.
We met with the majority of the record operators in the county, and when the laws had taken place last July, and they realized that this advisory board would have to be put together in order to give you guys a better understanding about what was required, and they elected Mark Giles as being the spokesperson for the.
And they tell you they support this idea?
Well, absolutely, yes.
Okay. Mr. Akers?
You just asked them, did they tell you they support this idea? Who
Yeah, I know that.
The record drivers
Yeah, the record drivers
from Caroline County,
From Carolina, there was Hillcrest, AJ's, Buds, were just some of the ones.
record operators.
The record operators.
Okay.
So,
they support until they get on your bad side and you take them off the list.
no.
And then I hear about it. And why was I taken off the list? And
We're not ready for the second reading
no,
yet.
we aren't ready for the
Right.
second reading.
I think we just need a little more tweaking on it,
Right.
and we'll give you guys a chance. There's no urgency on this that you guys know about.
Are we gonna get a
No,
copy?
sir.
Are we going to get a copy of the law?
Yeah. We'll get a copy of the law that moves us into this position in the first place.
You can, it's it's on quite a number of sections.
Okay.
But
Don't write
yes,
the whole
I
law
can
book.
get you the 20 pages or so that
Could we, and the major's done a great job in explaining the sheriff's position tonight, and I thank you for that. But could we get something from the sheriff
Yes, sir.
explaining in detail as to what he expects to accomplish by this ordinance, and where it will, the operation of towing vehicles in Caroline County will be different once this ordinance has been approved versus the way it's handled now and the impact it has now?
Yes, sir.
I'm all for, if it's going to save the citizens of Caroline County money for towing bills, I'm all for that. And if it makes it easier on people, I'm for that. But just to pass an ordinance, to say we have ordinance on the book, I am not for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Get us some more information
Yes, sir.
so we can make sure we can articulate this to our constituents.
Sure.
So we make sure it's the best thing for everybody. So
Yes,
a little
sir.
more work before we get to the second reading.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay?
All right.
Okay, I think at this point we'll probably take a recess until approximately 7:30. Board will take a recess. We'll now reconvene the Caroline County Board of Supervisors meeting, and we'll go into our public comment section. And I just would like to remind everybody who wasn't here earlier when we opened, Mr. Popovich did discuss in his opening comments in reference to ordinance, not ordinance, but a resolution for the folks in Port Royal. And he did ask for staff to start providing that information in his open board comments. So I just wanted to make that disclaimer because I know some of you guys weren't here for that. And at this time, I would ask the clerk if she would read the rules of the public comments section.
The public comment period shall be for the purpose of allowing the public to speak to the board on any matter which is not scheduled for public hearing at this meeting. To help conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, please refrain from clapping or other public demonstrations of support or opposition. The public comment period shall not serve as a forum for debate with the board or a question and answer period with the board. Remarks shall be addressed only to the board and not to staff, the audience, or the media. All public comments shall be made in a respectful manner. Cursing and antagonistic behavior are prohibited and shall be grounds for removal from the meeting. Comments should focus on matters or issues before the board or county and not individual board members or staff. Comments which single out an individual board member or staff may be ruled out of order by the chair. Each speaker shall clearly state his or her name, address, and voting district if applicable. There shall be a time limit for each individual speaker of 3 minutes. No speaker shall address the board more than once during the public comment period at any single board meeting. The county administrator will time the speakers and notify them when their time has expired. Copies of the detailed rules are located on the back table.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Hall.
Mr. Chairman, before we proceed, I know that there's several folks here on the AP Hill issue, and there's some folks that are representing some other folks, and I'd ask that anybody that is representing that we allow them an extra 2 minutes for a group.
On what? What group?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is that consensus of the board? Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Poppers? Okay, if there's someone speaking for a group, you'll be allowed 5 minutes for public comment section. Okay, at this time, any citizens who would like to address the board on any matter, please come forth and state your name and voting district.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Richard Dykes, Madison. I'd like to collectively ask you folks to put your thinking caps on. You're getting ready to debate the budget for next fiscal year. I'd like to see you folks try and figure out a way to get the maximum amount of dollars into the education system that you can. I think it's very important that we at least maintain the status quo of the Caroline County educational system. I would hate to see it slide downhill, and even though we are in times of budgetary stress, I think we can at least maintain status quo. That's all I have.
Right. Thank you, sir. Are there any other citizens who would like to address the board on any matter? And if there are others, please line up. That would save us some time this evening. I would appreciate that.
Hi.
Good evening.
Lori Dykes, 104 Bunker Hill in Ruther Glen. We're in Madison. Mr. Akers. I also attended the meeting on Sunday with Mr. Sill. Very informative meeting. Particular concern of ours is the Chesapeake Bay Governor School. Our daughter is a junior at this point, and her progression plan, she started at 8th grade with getting her Carnegie credits for high school. As it stands right now with the Chesapeake Bay Governor School, she'll be able to graduate with an associate's degree in science 2 weeks before high school. My concern is if this program is not continued with the educational system, that we would be at a loss for what are we going to put her in. She can't exactly go back to high school math after doing college statistics. Again, that was my husband that spoke earlier. Would like to ask that you work with the school board. We will be attending those meetings and come to a resolution that supports the educational system. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Dykes, you indicated to me a few minutes ago when I was chatting with you about a website that's available. Maybe you can share that with people.
Chesapeake Bay Governor School has a link connected to it with Pepsi Refresh, I think it is. On March 1st, you can access that and vote for potential funds that would go to the Chesapeake Bay Governor's School. I think an area of concern would be that the money that is allotted to go to a specific program go to that particular program. But on the Chesapeake Bay Governor's website is a link that you can connect and vote Pepsi Fresh, and it will possibly give the kids some grant funds to continue their program. Thank you for reminding me, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other citizens who'd like to address the board at this time? If there's others, please come forward and stand in line, please. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, board members. My name is T.C. Collins. I'm from the Port Royal District. There's a couple issues I'd like to address. Earlier I heard about the new towing ordinance. I do have some experience in that territory. That ordinance is for minimum standards for tow truck operators to operate in Caroline County. There are state regulations, but this ordinance that the Major was talking about would help prevent folks with pickup trucks and chains to pull your truck if you're unable to make those decisions. It sets a minimum standard for tow truck operators. Secondly, I understand that you fund the school board and they make the decisions on where those funds are spent. My child also goes to Chesapeake Bay's Governor's School. The young people in this program, Caroline is the host for the several regions. So if the school board decides not to fund that program, then the other schools will not be able to come to that area either. We have a famous horse from Secretariat from Caroline County. I would like to see some young people with a lot of potential make a name for Caroline County also. The Chesapeake Bay Governor's School is our future leaders. You might even take the opportunity to go by there. It's at the old school over here and see what they do. It's amazing. The teachers and the administrators there are all college professors who have basically sacrificed their careers for young people to make them leaders in our community. The last thing I'd like to address is I'd like for you to support the resolution that Mr. Popovich suggested earlier. I'm a resident of that area, and he's been greatly involved in that problem there, and there'll be other speakers to give a little bit more detail on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Are other citizens who would like to address the board at this time?
Hello, my name is Clancy Jordan. I'm from the Bowling Green District. I am a senior at Caroline High School as well as a senior at Chesapeake Bay's Governor's School. I am one of the head students that has been working with the director from Chesapeake Bay Governor's School as well as teachers and students from our site. I would just like to elaborate on the websites. Chesapeake Bay Governor's School website is cvgs.k12.va.us. Like you've heard before, we have a Pepsi Refresh project that we have signed up for that would give us funding for Governor's School. It begins March 1st. It will be at refresheverything.com/CBGS funding. I would like to invite you at any time to come visit Governor's School, to come talk to me personally, talk to our director, anything like that. And I know there's not much that can be done at this time, but I would just like to ask you to give as much funding to education that's possible. I've experienced this firsthand, and I know how much of a good experience it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Clancy. Are there any other citizens who would like to address the board? State your name and voting district.
Mr. Rozelle, members of the board, Mr. Ashcraft. I'm Bill Wick, and I'm speaking with you tonight as a resident of Port Royal and an elected member of the Town Council. Earlier this year, we recognized and realized that we were facing a real crisis. It could cost us both our houses and our quality of life. Many of us from the town of Port Royal and Portabago Bay examined the options available to us and have been working on to find a solution that would be acceptable to all parties. Following a meeting Nancy Long and Jim Heinbach, representing the town, had with Colonel Hefner in late October, we discussed our position on this matter at our town council meeting a week later. Contrary to the reputation that we can never agree on anything, the council found that we were unanimously opposed to the manner of notice, the manner in which the assessment was conducted, and their conclusions. Further, we vehemently opposed the actions that were proposed in the DEAR EOD and the related documents. For these and other reasons clearly defined in the document, the council passed a resolution unanimously at the meeting, clearly stating our objections, and sent it to all concerned, including members of the Board of Supervisors. Port Royal is a vital part and a gateway to Caroline County, and we have always been supportive of the activities sponsored by the county. Last month, Nancy Long stood right here and asked the board to pass a similar resolution supporting our position and conveying solidarity on this important issue. We are aware and appreciate the two members of the board that have been very much concerned and involved with us in this crisis, Mr. Popowitz and Mr. Seeley. Knowing all of you as I do, I'm sure that you understand our situation and would be willing to help in any way possible. We are very simply, don't let us stand alone. We're very pleased that Mr. Popowitz has started some action on developing a resolution, but please pass this resolution and acknowledge our situation and the willingness to stand with us. I have a copy of the resolution with me. If you'd like to use it as a guide for what you're doing, I'll be more than happy to leave it with you. Thank you for allowing me these few minutes with you to discuss this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Wick.
Thank you, Bill.
Good evening,
Good
sir.
evening. William Evans, Campers Lane, Madison District.
What's your last name?
William Evans,
Okay.
Campers Lane, Madison District.
Thank you.
I've come before the board this evening to discuss matters of the upcoming budget. We had a meeting on Sunday with approximately 75 parents, most of which you see right here in this room. We discussed the budget process as well as what we can do, to fund the Chesapeake Bay Governor's School and what the process would be. Our first process is to come to you and let you know that we understand the process, how it works, that the board develops a budget, submits that the school board has held accountable for. And we intend to do that. Okay, our first process is to come to you and ask for at least the funding level that was given last year. Whatever that percentage was, we ask for the same percentage. The message that I would also like to say is, and that I hope resonates across the board, is back to basics. What are the core services of our county? And one of those would be public education. And we intend to go before the school board and take that very same message. We expect them to go back to the basics, those core services that we provide our children in the schools. We ask them to go back to those core functions. And in doing so, we looked at many of the processes that are in place, whether it be an initiative by the state or by the federal. And there are costs associated with that. I asked this board to do the very same thing. If there are federal or state initiatives that come before you that may come with a grant, may come with money, but there's still a cost associated, there could be a fair share that's being attributed to the county to pay. I ask you to look at all programs across the entire spectrum of the basics, the public services. That's all I have to say this evening. And again, my pledge to you is based upon the funding that you're able to commit to the schools. The parents that met on Sunday plan to go before the school board and make our pitch for Chesapeake Bay Governor's School. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. State your name and voting district, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Helmut Linnevanberg. I reside in Portabago Bay Estates. I am also an old GI. I was a tank commander during the 1950s, stationed in the Fulda Gap, the 14th Armored Cavalry Regiment. I belong to the U.S. Armor Association and am currently a founding contributor to the U.S. Army Museum to be built on the mall in Washington, D.C. I've lived in Portabago Bay for 8 years, and I feel good when I hear the small arms fire, rifle, 50 caliber machine gun and other weapons, realizing that our men and women are getting the training they need so badly before being assigned overseas. They should get all the shaking in the boots out of their system before it's time to squeeze the trigger in earnest. And some of you may have been there. Last year, this feeling changed somewhat because there were major explosions at the base. They felt to me like they were 2 or 3 miles on the other side of US 17. It shook the houses, it rattled and broke some windows, it popped hundreds of sheetrock nails. There were cracks in the sheetrocks, cracks in the basement walls, and people got very scared and concerned. There have been lawsuits filed, and some of the answers that people are getting are unbelievable. Oh, it wasn't us, it was the Marines. And when you deal with the Marines, you get told that you'd have to deal with the Navy, and people are getting the runaround. Even the pastor of one of the churches who lost one of the old windows, it was blown out by the blast. So it's not just people complaining about nothing. The Army has begun with an explosive program and intends to construct a demolition range or several demolition ranges at AP Hill. Now, if the few blasts of last year that did all that damage is a foretaste of the thing to come, people in Port Royal and Portabago Bay can no longer live there. Already we see real estate is dead. Nothing is moving. The word is out. It's been written about in the Freelance Star. It's been mentioned in our local paper here, and we are concerned. Our major investments are a home in this beautiful county, this beautiful land along the Rappahannock. We don't want to lose it. I am concerned that if we start banging away, that the septic tanks are going to crack, and you got the black stuff running down towards the river. And I don't have to mention the tax base to you with what's happening to the real estate values. Dear members of the board, I would think that at least an independent environmental impact study should be conducted to see, you know, if people can live there prior to the construction, which is scheduled for this fall. I very much appreciate your help, and thank you.
All right.
Sir, would you please spell your last name?
In 3 words. First word, L-I-N-N-E. Second word, V-O-N, and B-E-R-G.
Thank you. I got the BRG right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your service, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I'm back. I want my resolution, and I want it fast as possible, and I shouldn't have to come back, but I know the snow has delayed everything, and I do understand that. I also, before I forget, I have 2 comments from citizens who couldn't be here tonight that they wanted me to turn into the record. Thank you, Mr. Popowitz, for bringing up the resolution. We continue to make communications with the Army, and I know that Lieutenant Colonel Hafner has met with several of you since our last meeting privately. And I really like Colonel Hafner. He's trying to do a good job. He got dropped into a cesspool that he wasn't even aware he was getting involved in when he got these orders. But I want to make one thing clear. Lieutenant Colonel Hafner is a warrior. He has a job to do. He is following orders. He is not giving the orders. These orders are coming from higher above. It is not his job to question. It is his job to make this thing work. Therefore, please, when you listen, consider both sides of the story and look higher. We have spoken with Representative Whitman. We have spoken to several of our state representatives. This is coming from headquarters. This is coming from Fort Lee. And this is my feeling on this. And once you research this, I just hope you get as mad as I did. And it takes a little bit to get me mad. If I can live with my husband, it takes a bit to get me mad. But they did not consider us at all. Fort Lee wanted this project down there. They wanted this School of Excellence down there. They're getting the financial input. They sold themselves out. If that's the quality of life they wanted, that's fine. If the community said, bring it on, we want you guys down here, then they should put up with the trash that they produce. They should have the explosions at Fort Pickett, where the BRAC report said it should be. They shouldn't be sending it up to us. And this is just the start. A lot of the complaints that I'm getting from citizens, it's not coming from the EOD school. It's not here yet. But every year, they've done more and more without any consideration. When I was here last month, I was embarrassed that I didn't give you all any facts or details. I thought I was in the dark on this. They never presented anything to you. Now, all this goes back to when Colonel Greasy was here. I'm not trying to put this on Lieutenant Colonel Hafner. But my mother worked for the Marine Corps for 38 years. She worked under 13 flag officers. My father was a veteran, and I have a son that's serving. They fight for our rights, and for headquarters just to put this on our laps without consideration to the quality of life or consideration for the feelings of the citizens that live here, the citizens that they are supposed to be serving, is wrong. And I don't expect to have to wait another month for resolution and support from the board, because you guys are better than that. I know you are, and I know you're going to back us on this. But we're running out of time. They want to start building on this thing this fall. So we've got to get it straight. We've got to be firm that this is not supposed to be here. Fort Lee wanted it. Those communities want it. They keep it down at Fort Pickett, where the BRAC report, the law says it should be. And so please back us up on this. Get this work done. Believe me, I know all the paperwork, and I know you've got to look at it, and I know you've got to vote on this, but I really need you guys to vote on this at your next meeting. And we need to have a unity, a show of force, because Caroline shouldn't be treated like this. There is no need for the lack of communication that we have had over the past several years with AP Hill and with headquarters. So we need to work on this. And I think we have a chance on working on it with Lieutenant Colonel Hafner, but we can't slow down and we can't let up on them. So thank you for your time, and keep on with your research. Look at the DVDs you have on the public hearing. I think you'll see where the unity comes and what we're dealing with on our side of the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Long.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Mayor Long a question? Can I ask Mayor Long a question?
Yeah, she did get 5 minutes for her time, but Mr. Akers,
can I just ask her a question?
Okay.
Just one question.
Yeah, we'll open that door, okay?
No, I won't open it. I'll let it go.
All right.
I'll ask you later.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Are you speaking for the Property Owner Association tonight, sir?
Yes, and myself.
Okay. For yourself or you?
Primarily for myself, but I don't want to hide the fact that I'm also president of the Port of Argo.
You want 3 or 5 minutes?
I will, in either case, be less.
Okay, yeah.
But I appreciate it.
This association, you get 5.
I understand. Mr. Chairman and board members, we thank you for your interest. I'm John Lampman, at the Port Royal District, but also I'm president of the Port of Argo Bay Homeowners Association. I'm here to speak on behalf of the resolution that Supervisor Popowitz has apparently discussed earlier this evening and urged its consideration, prompt consideration, and passage. The record is clear. The Army has not been responsive to Caroline County citizens or its elected representatives. When this whole thing started in 2006 and 2007, the Army went to extraordinary lengths to involve the community of Fort Lee and the surrounding areas. There are elected officials, there are government officials, and extensive efforts were made, the Army did not contact a single Caroline County official. More recently, this board, our representatives, sought to meet in a public working session with the Army, and the Army declined. There have now been 3 environmental assessments. February 2007, there was another in June 2008, and a third in July 2009. Of the 2 most recent environmental assessments, there have been extensions on each. Despite all of that, in the most recent public hearing in the town of Port Royal, Army public hearing, Major General Horst stood up and began the meeting by saying that the Army had not met its burden of proof to show that there would be no significant impact on Caroline County and its citizens. The most recent test of the last 10 days, a test which was done primarily for the purpose of showing citizens what it might sound like to hear the noise of the proposed missions, was failed in 2 regards. The first, the sample was not representative, but secondly, it was conducted during a snowstorm. And the Army's Cold Center for Research drives the nail in the coffin on this test. They actually have tested and published the impact of snow on one of the size explosives that was used in the test. And the finding was clear. Snow deadened the blast pressure to a third of that you would have if when the same explosive is detonated over grass. The test, frankly, was a waste of money. It again demonstrates that the Army has not been forthcoming, it has not been direct, it has not been clear in responding to the kinds of issues and concerns that are being raised by Caroline County citizens. It is critical that the board and citizens stand together and insist that the Army be responsive with clear, concrete, solid information. We need to do it in a Caroline County kind of way. We don't need a lot of hoopla and everything. We can work on this, but they need to know we're serious about working on this, and your interest in this is very much appreciated, and I want to thank you for that now and look forward to working with you as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Lampman. State your name and voting district, please.
I am Mildred Bowman. I live in Portabago Bay Community. Vote at, where do I vote? Port Royal District. Gentlemen, I first of all appreciate the opportunity to come and speak. I'm not a speaker. I'm a simple housewife. No grandma. That's the best title I can dig up. But I want to thank Mr. Popowitz and Mr. Silly, especially. I do know that y'all have actively supported us in this problem that we've had with the Army, and I'd like not to see it as a problem, but it is. We moved here from Richmond in 2000. We've been here almost 10 years now. We visited many times as son, who lives here 19 years in Portabago. We didn't have any reason not to purchase a piece of land and build a small house. We have a small, modest home, but it means $1 billion to us, to retire in. And that's what we did, and I have loved it here. When we've gone into town, have to come home, I've loved coming home. But now, I dread it. Why? Because the Army has changed things. Things were tolerable. It's like Mr. Lenny Von Berg said, we heard the rat-a-tat-tat, we heard the explosions, but they weren't objectionable. Last year, they started changing things, and the explosions I will not stand here and exaggerate, shook our homes violently, resulting in quite a few broken windows and damages. And there are some folks, some neighbors, that have still filed claims and have not heard a word from anyone. And the ones that have heard have been offered 30 cents on the dollar for damage and signing a waiver that you will no longer have any claims against the Army. Gentlemen, that's a death certificate to our homes. My husband is a vet, and if I can take just one extra minute, if I can take his 3 minutes, he is a vet. He served 3 years in this country. He came as an exchange student, had to go home. He followed the rules. He immigrated. Before 2 legs were on dry ground off of the ship, he received draft papers. He didn't mind. He wanted to be a part of this country and has been. He's done a good job. He served this country well for 3 years. But the clincher is the Army lied. They told him he would be a citizen. You signed 3 years, you will be a citizen. He wasn't even in basic training, and they told him that rule no longer applies. You ask me what this has to do with this bunch of apples? Integrity. Integrity, trust, and the Army, in this instance, we don't trust. I'm sorry to say, we are all for our soldiers. We are behind them 100%. My husband was a soldier for 3 years, and he served this country well, and I'm proud of him. But I'm not proud of the integrity that has been brought on us and the way things have been handled. It's dirty. And we just ask you for your support. We may have to count our losses and move on, because I can't live with these explosions. They not only destroy things, they destroy your nervous system. I can't take it. I can't live with it. We might have to move. If the Army continues with this proposal, and we only learned of this proposal last year as to what the Army proposed to do last year when so much damage was done. That's when we learned of the strength of the explosions and the frequency. And gentlemen, we come here tonight not for a battle of the wills. We're not trying to battle with the Army. We're asking for common sense. As we rode down here tonight and we saw all of this acreage, and we thought, why in the world do they have to put this in our backyards? I've invited them to come and visit during these explosions. And if that's what they think is appropriate, that they can buy our home, and that's all I've got to say. It's just, we've gotten sick over this thing. And I like to be able to go to our home and retire. And one other small thing, noise. A whole lot has been said about noise. But it's not the noise, it's the shock waves. Thank you, gentlemen, and
Thank
I
you, Ms.
appreciate
Bowman.
your support.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Name and voting district.
Good afternoon. I'm Ned Donaldson. I live in Port Royal District. I'm a retired engineer out of the Department of Defense, specifically the Secretary of the Navy's office. I have not been involved with BRAC directly, but I have been involved with BRAC on the periphery, feeding information into the process from a Navy perspective. So I'm somewhat familiar with BRAC, not this one. But when the Department of Defense gets ready to make a profound decision, such as moving something from one location to another, we saw the BRAC moved a lot of stuff to Pickett. Then a piece of that was carved out and sent to AP Hill. I have asked in writing and verbally twice for a cost and benefit analysis, which is the professional way to move into a decision-making process where a lot of money is involved, especially taxpayers' money, and you're stewards of that taxpayers' money. I've been told one time that it was a classified report. The second time I asked for it, I was told we did not